Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi Kovacs here for the second day of Sukkot, 5785. Mishnah Yomi is holding in chapter 7 of Bava Metzia, which we started yesterday, talking about how the employer has to buy lunch. Now Mishnah Bet Gimel will launch into the topic of, it's not just lunch, a worker gets snacks, and this is a biblical provision. Ve'elu ochlin min Torah. These workers get to eat because the Torah says so. These are psukim in Devarim chapter 23, the end of chapter 23 in Deuteronomy. It talks about when you go into your friend's vineyard, you can take some grapes, but don't put them in your kli. Now, you can't just wander into somebody's vineyard and take their grapes. We're talking about a worker who's working for the owner of the vineyard. While they're picking grapes, he's allowed to snack on some grapes, but not put them in his pocket or his own basket. He's got to put them in the owner's basket, right? And then there's another pasuk in chapter 25, verse 4 of Devarim, Deuteronomy, Al tachsam shor bedisho. You can't muzzle an ox during threshing. Now, threshing is when the ox is stomping on the grains to separate the chaff, and so he's working with something that's detached. That's also a really important pasuk because it's right next to Malchus, right next to the court administering lashes for certain Torah prohibitions. We actually learned from this juxtaposition that just like muzzling your ox, muzzling any animal has a ma'aseh, has a maisa, they call it, has an action. So there's only malkut on a love that has an action and not a love in nitzak la'aseh, like something you could just undo or return. Anyway, with that introduction, ve'elu ochlin min Torah. Ha'oseh bimchubar lakarka, somebody working with something attached to the ground, b'shot gemar malacha. At the time when it's done, it's ripe. For instance, he's picking the grapes and putting them into the basket of the vineyard owner. B'talush min akarka, something separated from the ground, ad shelo nigmar malacha, before the malacha's done. The example would be threshing, like the ox is threshing, people may be threshing too. It's already cut off the ground, but the work is not done. Bedavar shegidulo min haaretz, but it is a species that comes from the ground. The Bartner mentions this excludes somebody making cheese. Milk is not considered coming from the ground. Ve'elu she'enon ochlin, these are the workers that don't eat during their work. Oseh b'mechubar, someone working with something attached, lakarka, to the ground. B'shah she'ein gemar malacha, when it's not ripe, it's not done yet. That would be kind of rude to pick unripe grapes, before they've ripened. Ubetolish min akarka, and something detached to the ground, me'achar shnigmar melochta, after the melacha is done, after it's processed into the actual grains and the chaff is separated, then actually now it's chayiv in truma and meiser, so really those should be separated before anybody's eating it anyway. Ubetvar she'enam gedulim min haaretz, and also something that is not coming from the ground. Mishnah Gimel tells us what kind of work is he doing. Haya ose biyadav. If he's working with his hands, of alo beroglov, but he's not working with his legs. He's sitting in one place, picking peas out of the pod. Or beroglov, he's working with his legs. For instance, he's stomping on the grapes. Of alo biyadav, he's not using his hands to squish the grapes. Afilu b'ktefo, or even if he's using his shoulder, he's just schlepping the picked grapes with his shoulder. Harei zei ochel. He is entitled to eat, according to the Tanakama, as long as he's using his body to do the malacha with this produce, and it meets the other criteria, he's okay. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Achi Yaseh biyadav uberoglav. He says the worker, the human worker, has to be using his hands and his feet, because he compares this to the shor bedisho. The ox during threshing is using all four legs, and I guess two of those are hands and two of those are feet. If you ask the shor, he'll tell you which are which, but he's using all four appendages. So too, Rabbi Yossi says you have to be using everything. You at least be walking and using your arms and legs for leverage to pick the produce. Halacha is not like Rabbi Yossi. Baruch Hashem, we're zoche to learn about the halacha that applies during a harvest, during the festival, Hag Asif, the festival that's also related to a harvest, Hag Kasher v'Sameach, and Tizkul Mitzvot.